I was actively addicted I will be sober as long as I was actively addicted. So it's kind of a cool milestone.
That is, dude. Most people that get into drugs, they don't ever come back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let alone, kind of creating success that you've got going on right now.
Yeah.
They're usually just lost.
That's very true.
So
they really are.
Lost. What did that take you down like a dark road? Did you go to prison or something?
Not prison. I was hoping to go to prison. I kept trying to wait to go to prison, but they wouldn't send me because the jail sucks.
Oh, I'm like, why is that?
Prison, they let you live a little more because people are doing life in there. So, their idea of a yard, the county jail is this just, I don't know, 100-foot circular concrete wall with a grate on top. Like, you can't even see anything.
It's like a Best Western.
Yeah. But I went to jail actually 17 times to be exact. I didn't stay every time, but in totality, I think I added it up. I think I did like 20 months, not consecutively, but I'd do a couple months here and then a couple months there. And it was dark. It was I immediately. So in high school, I don't know how much of the story you want me to tell. I'll try to tell the Cliff Notes. But in high school, one reason why I didn't want to go to college either was I had started going down to Tijuana, Mexico. I linked up with these older guys who I just thought were so cool. It turns out they were probably losers. And they were going down to Mexico. And they'd go down there and they'd go to the pharmacias and they'd get a bunch of steroids and narcotics. And they would take the door panels off the car, shove them all in there, and then zip them back up and drive through the border with the sombrero on, and they come back and sell them. And so one time I got the idea to go. I was like, I'm gonna go do this. So I went and did it, and
with them or by yourself?
By myself.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Well, I went with another buddy, but I was like, dude, I know what they're doing. Let's just go down there and do it.
Yeah.
So we went down there, just idiot savant, not realizing the amount of actual federal felonies I was committing by drug trafficking through different countries. And I got away with it. And I got away with it 3 times. And so by the time I was a senior in high school, I thought I was pretty much had arrived. That's where my entrepreneurship began. I was joke because I was selling drugs and had a bunch of drugs and was doing them pretty much every day, but not to the point where even my parents knew. They knew I had a boatload of cash, which was weird because they found a briefcase one time, and I was like, "Oh, that's not mine." I'm like, "Why do you have so much money?" I'm like, "I don't know. It's so weird. I don't know how we ended up with that." And so what had happened was I started using OxyContin then and was getting it from Mexico, and I never really ran out. And so I did it every day. And you see, I was selling drugs to other high school kids, so I didn't realize I didn't see the side of the junkie banging on my door, my window at 2 a.m. needing their stuff.
Yeah.
And I had heard about people talk about withdrawals and stuff, but I was using it every day about the last 6 months of high school. And then towards the end, actually, it was the summer after my senior year, a buddy had gone down, another friend of mine had gone down to do the same thing. He got caught. He got stuck in a Mexican prison. It was all over the news. And I was like, oh, crap. Okay, I can't go anymore. I'm too pretty to go to a Mexican prison, so I'm not going. And I thought, you know what? It's time to just clean up my life. I'm good. I'm done. And so I thought that, and I had heard about withdrawals and detox, but I was like, I was just doing a little bit every day. It can't be that bad. But I didn't go a day without it. So your body becomes physically dependent. And so I did the rest of what I had, and I said, all right, it's time to grow up, time to move on. I'll just stop. And when I stopped, the withdrawals were so bad, vicious. And I was not expecting it to be that sick. And it's like the worst flu you've had times 10 with almost a mild panic attack all the time.
What was it you were taking every day?
Oxycontins, opiates, okay. Yeah. And a bunch of other things, muscle relaxers, this, that. But the Oxycontin is what got me. And so I ended up calling a buddy and was like, dude, I can't do this. I'm so sick, bro. I'm shaking. I'm shivering. And he had said, come over. My older brother has something for you. So I showed up at his house, and this guy walked in and proceeded to give me I'll leave out some of the graphic details, but basically, as an 18-year-old kid, I shot up heroin for the first time. And I remember it was a line in the sand I had drawn. Like, I was the youngest of 5. I came from a Mormon family. Like, I was like, this isn't supposed to happen to me. Like, you know, and I was like, oh, heroin is gross. Like, that's like junkies downtown. And I remember I said no at first. I was like, oh, no, I can't do heroin. And like 20 minutes later, I looked at him and said, well, make me feel better? And he goes, instantly. So I proceeded to shoot up heroin for the first time. And he wasn't wrong. Instantly, I felt better. And the guy looked at me, and I'll never forget it. He looks at me, and he goes, sorry, kid, your life's never going to be the same. And he walked away. And I was like, what the hell does that mean? I was like, how am I going to keep doing this? And then I found out how cheap it was. And then the next day, of course, came, and I was going to be just as sick, so I just kept using. And so it got a lot of people like gradually go into it. I just like went full bore like into it. And so ended up in my first treatment center when I was 19, maybe it was 2005. And I showed up there, and I was like, okay, so clearly I overreacted. Like, you guys are way worse than me. Like, this is not going to be a problem, but I won't do heroin anymore, but I'm not going to stop like partying. I'm not even 21 yet. Yeah. And so I got out, and I started partying again, drinking, and within a couple months, it led me right back to the hard stuff. And that pattern went on and on from basically then until November 20th of 2012. I mean, just incomprehensible demoralization. Like, it's just, looking back, it's just the insanity of it all. Like, I could not stop. Like, I'd get these brief times, I'd get sober, I'd get back in the fitness industry, I'd get back working. I mean, I know Mike Manfrey was on your show. Yep. And then I'd end up back in jail, and Mike Manfrey would come around. He was the cop then.
Oh,
and
shit.
Yeah. And so I knew Mike from high school. Yeah. And Mike actually had some really cool chats with me. He'd actually pull me out. He definitely favored me a little in there. And like, he'd pull me out and when everyone was locked up, and he'd be like, what in the fuck are you doing, man? I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, dude, like, you gotta stop this shit, man. And I was like, I know. And I'd get out, and I'd do good for like a month or two, and then it's just the same shit, man. I'd go right back to it. Like, whether I wanted to or not, it felt like.
What broke the cycle?
Man, so that last year, so, you know, keep in mind, like, in this time, this is not a joke. I got married to a crackhead that I was dating, barely remember getting married.
It doesn't help.
No, situation. I mean, apparently she's in prison now, but I married her. Don't remember getting married. Like, we were in this blacked out, glazed over. They make it way too easy to get married. I recently got divorced about a year and a half ago, and that shit was hard. But getting married was super easy. You just barely pay a fee, and you go to the courthouse, and there you are. And, you know, I lived in my car during this time. I mean, you know, all those trips to jail and all this stuff. And it just, like, wasn't enough. Like, I don't know what my problem was. So the last year, so I did almost all of 2011 in jail. That was the longest stretch I'd done. They gave me a year on my sentence, but you do about 8 months with good time. And that was like a long stretch for me. And I remember thinking like, oh, like, I've never been clean this long. Like, I'm done. But the reality was I didn't change who I was at all. Like, I was the same dude. I was in there getting in fights, gambling, you know, doing all this shit. And so I got out, and I remember I was like, this is it. I'm going to stay sober. And 3 days out of jail, the itch came back, man, and it just, like, hit me. And I remember they tell you all the shit in rehab, because I had a bunch of rehabs too, where, you know, play the tape through and think about it. Like, and I did all that. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go use, and I'm not going to stop, and I might die. Like, and I still went into it.
Is that what playing the tape through is?
Yeah, like put
it through your mind.
What happened last time? Like, once I start, like, and this is what makes the difference between someone who's an addict and someone who just maybe likes to use drugs, was once I started, I was powerless. Like, once I put that first one in me, like, all bets were off. Like, it just, no matter what, it just ran my life. No matter what I wanted to do, it's like, and so I played the tape all the way through. I was like, you're going to go down, you're going to pick up, and most people will overdose when they've been sober, you know, as long as I had at that point. Yeah. And, okay, so let's say you don't overdose. What's going to happen? Well, you're not going to stop till something stops you, and you're going to ruin everything. And I still went anyways, and I was crying on the way down. And anyways, picked it up, and that started a long run for me. So all of 2012, from like January until my sobriety date in November, I didn't draw a sober breath. And my pattern is all the other times I would go 3 or 4 months on a massive bender, and then something would step in. My parents, would send me to detox or rehab, or the cops kept intervening, which sometimes I was grateful for.
Yeah.
I'd go on these gnarly 4-month runs, and this time it just went because my parents had cut me off. They're like, we're done. We're not, like, you're not allowed around here. And rightfully so. Like, I'd stolen their checks. Like, it was, and they just said, we're done. Like, you got to figure it out on your own. And so we love you, but don't come around here. So, and I didn't have any pending charges because that's why they finally just gave me the year in jail. So I wasn't on probation for the first time. So I wasn't like, had warrants out, and I just went. I didn't draw a sober breath, and I was homeless that whole year. And so I didn't, I never slept on the streets. I was very resourceful.
The whole year you were homeless?
Yeah. Bouncing from place to place, motel to motel. Not like good motels, like ones down, like, you know, around the block here that you're just like, oh.
Down on
like
the
I got
corner?
off on 33rd and I looked at that Motel
That
6
one on
and
this
I was
corner?
like,
Oh, dude, that's bad.
yeah. And like, that's the places I was staying, and just the people I got involved with, like my, you know, because before I would do these little 3 or 4 month benders, and then I'd get sober for 2 or 3 months and I'd get my size back. Like, I actually didn't really look like a junkie. Like, it was really odd. I you know, I still lifted sometimes even when I was using, and this last, I fully succumbed to the fact that, like, okay, you're a junkie, man. And I just went that whole year. And so, was homeless the whole year, slept place to place. And so by the end of the year, it started to get cold out, and just the heinous shit I saw that year. It's a really long answer to your question.
No, it's good, dude. No, it's good, dude.
Okay. Like the people I got involved with, I made the decision. This is what I thought was a calculated decision, was that I was going to start using meth with the heroin because I couldn't stay awake on the heroin. And so I had to hustle every day to get a new $150 to get my fix, and then to try to get $50 more for a cheap motel every single day.
Damn.
And so I started using meth, and the people that introduced me to, there were some bad people, like, and shit that I just never thought I would see. I just was ending up in these, I was like, is this real life? Like, what's happening? Like, people, just kidnapping this girl over a $30 drug debt, and I'm in the back seat, and I'm like, what's happening? This girl's hogtied, like, shit that I'm just like this. I remember thinking sometimes, like, I think you're hallucinating. This isn't real, and it was all real.
It's just crazy how it snowballs.
It's so bad, man.
You hear about it. You hear
Yeah.
that it leads to other things and everything, but it's listening to you talk right now, dude, just the snowball.
Just absolutely spiraled. Like, it was like sucked me in, and and so by the end of that year, man, like I'd watched some really, really bad shit towards the end of the year. And shit that I never wanted to see. And I was like, what am I a part of? And hanging out with people who were being wanted for murder. And I was like, for the first time, I was like, if the drugs don't kill you, these people might. Like, and I was paranoid because of the meth, and I wasn't sleeping. And so by the end of the year, come November, it's getting cold too, and it really sucks to be homeless.
Did you go straight meth, or were you still doing the heroin meth?
Oh yeah, heroin
combo? Every
every day. Yeah, and then meth. And by the end, I was just doing basically anything I could get my hands on. And so the turning point is like towards the end of that year, I remember I started to get scared for my life, and I couldn't differentiate the false from the real. Like, I couldn't differentiate, like, am I hallucinating because I'm not sleeping and I'm on meth, or like, am I actually legitimately in danger? Like, are these people going to kill me? Like, and I couldn't tell, but looking back, I'm like, you probably might have got killed. Like, these were not good dudes. And so by the end of the year, I started praying for the first time in a long time. And I just was like, dude, if something's up there, like, please help me. I don't even know what's going on. Like, I don't know how I got so deep in this world. And so by the end of the year, my mom called me in November, and she said, hey, your grandfather passed away. And I was like, shit. And she was like, I really want you to be at the funeral. I said, okay. She said, but, please do whatever you got to do just to be right. And I go, and I knew what that meant.
Yeah.
It meant, don't be so high that I'm drooling all over myself or acting weird, and don't be withdrawing where I'm shitting myself and shaking and shivering. And so I just said, okay, I will. So 2 days later, the day comes where she's got to pick me up from the shitty motel, And of course, I ran out of drugs. I'm super sick. I'm dope sick, they called it, and it's pretty violent to watch somebody go through that. So she picked me up, and I remember just thinking, okay, just go tough it out, and then when you get back, you can go get some. Like I felt this obligation to show up for my grandpa. So she picked me up. I hopped in the car, and immediately she was like, "You got to be kidding me." She was like, you're a mess," and I was like, I can do it, and I'm shaking and shivering, and all of a sudden I just vomit all in her car. And she's like, "You cannot go up like this." She was like, "What do we need to do?" And I said, "We need to call the drug dealer's house." So I made my good little religious mother at the time, she's not part of the church anymore, but take me to the dope man's house, went in, got the drugs, and when I came back out, we were going to be way late. We had to go up to Brigham City. She was going to be late to her own dad's funeral. And so she said, "Hop in the back seat and do whatever you got to do." So she knew I used drugs, but she had never watched me use them. And so the moment that it all changed for me is I hopped in that back seat, and I remember we were driving up the highway, and so it's very graphic. Like you got to find a vein, and I didn't have any at the point. They were, and I'm cooking up the heroin, and then I'm trying to find a vein. And there's blood going everywhere. It's just, and I remember my mom just looking at me in the rearview mirror, and she didn't say a word, and she's just crying, and she's not sobbing. They're not yups. It's just tears, and she's not even wiping them off her face. And I don't know how we didn't crash because she's just looking in the rearview mirror the whole time with just like this head shake. And I'm thinking the whole time, you are the most selfish piece of shit. Like, my mom had never watched me actually do drugs. And so I shot up, and immediately, obviously, I felt better from the physical, but it was one of the first times that it couldn't numb the emotional pain. I remember thinking in that moment, and it was a very distinct thought. I looked at her and I said, "I'm sorry." And she didn't say a word, and I just said, "Shit." And I thought, I got two options here. You either kill yourself, man. And that I hadn't actually wanted to kill myself when I'd been on the drugs. When I was sick, I wanted to.
Yeah.
But legitimately, I said, you need to kill yourself or you need to get sober. Like, I can't go on a day like this. And so that night, I went to my grandpa's funeral and got back. And that night, I hopped in a car. This guy came and picked me up, and he asked me if I'd drive because he was too high. But it turns out he asked me to drive because the car was stolen. So I got in the car, and we're going to get drugs, and I'm getting on I-15, and I almost hit a cop because I'm texting the dealer. And I swerve, and I almost hit him, and he has to swerve off into the grass and come back. And I looked, and I go, "That's a cop." And he flipped on his lights, and I was like, "Shit." And the kid informs me that the car is stolen. And he came up, and the cop said, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" And I remember it was just this like moment of surrender. Like I just took a deep breath, and I was like, "All right, I've been praying for this to end. This is the end." And I said, "Yeah, I almost hit you. This car's stolen. I'm high. I don't have a license. You need to take me to jail." He was like, "Wait, what?" He was like, "Okay." He was like, "Well, you're not wrong. The car's stolen. Like, let's go." So he took me to jail, and that's where my journey began, and that was November 19th. And so I went through the most hellacious withdrawals in jail. Never like had kicked like that. And I remember just thinking the whole time, like, this is the last time you have to do this. This is the last time you have to do it, dude. Just go through this. This is the last time if you want it to be. And I laid on the cement in my own vomit, and I'd said things in there like I'm going to kill myself, so they put me in like the solitary like crazy unit. Like, not good things to say when you say that. So, and I got out of jail, man. I actually got out of jail 30 days later. The charges were dropped because it turns out the kid stole it from his mother, so she dropped the charges. And they called me to go home, and I was like, "Wait, what?" I thought I was going to be in there a while. And I called my mom. She came and picked me up, and she dropped me off. She said, "You can't come to the house, but I'll drop you off at a recovery meeting, like an AA meeting." So she dropped me off, and that's where my journey began. So,
dude, that's crazy. That's crazy.
That was a really long way to say
what
that.
year?
Sorry, dude.
No, you're good. What year was it that you ended up figuring out that that's where the journey was going to end? What year was that you went into jail for 30 days?
November 20th, 2012.
2012.
So that's what would be 10 years. So, and haven't had a drink or a drug or any mind-altering substances since, man. Just did the deal finally. And like, it was that moment in the backseat of my mom's car. I've shared that story a lot, but that was the moment it changed. There was something different that happened when it was divine. It was supposed to be that way. And I just hated who I was. Like, I was sick. Like, the look on my mom's face was just ultimate heartbreak. And so I Yeah, man, I haven't looked back since, and I worked my ass off to get sober, and I did everything they told me in every rehab to do. I finally actually did it. I changed everything. I changed all the people I was hanging out with. I went to a ton of meetings. I took direction. Just anything I could do. Like, I was just a sponge for information. People tell me what to do, and I was like, done. Like, if it helps me stay sober, let's do it.